Yes.
Everybody? Commissioner Duncan? Yeah.
Yes, again.
Okay. There we go, that's who I missed. Sorry, Commissioner Arizona.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, I have an old sheet, I was going on the fly.
Do we have any other additions or subtractions to the agenda? Tonight? No? So now we move on to item number 3 on the agenda, public comment. And tonight, none of our agenda items are open for a public hearing. So if you would like to comment on any of the agenda items or anything other than what's on the agenda, feel free to please come forward.
Good evening, my name is Laura St. Louis. I work with Disability Advocates of Kent County. Somebody was, Karen Brower, I believe, was kind enough to put something on your desks about our Disability Awareness Day we have coming up the end of March. I would like to formally invite you to come. It's like a mini conference. So it's gonna have a quick keynote from our Executive Director, Dave Volkowski, as well as a couple of breakout sessions and then lunch and a legislative panel. So would love to have you come. And I'm also here just to introduce myself, so if you see me out in the audience, you know I'm not here to cause trouble, maybe. But just so that you can get to know me as I get to know you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else have anything to share? State your name and address, please.
My name is Brandon Sinclair, and I reside at 4312 Pine Ridge Parkway, apartment 202, Grand Rapids, Michigan, 49525. I'm running for state representative here in the 73rd District. I'm a conservative and a Republican. I just wanted to come introduce myself to each of you here on the City Commission, and I wanted to be a resource to each of you, provide you and the public with my contact information, also my email address. My cell phone is 616-822-1621. And the best email address for me for campaign purposes would be info@brandonsinclair.com, and my website's brandonsinclair.com. But I'm from Camden Township. My wife and I reside in Plainfield Township in the Northview area, and I used to work in the Department of Attorney General for the Executive Division. I was Schuette's West Michigan liaison. That's a lot of the experience that I'll be bringing to the table, knowing how state government works and having that inside perspective, but being for the community and from the community here. With that said, just wanted to say hi. So,
Hello, thank you so much.
thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you for that. So next we have the report from Mayor and City Commissioners, and I'll start with you, Commissioner Ambrose.
I have nothing to report.
I have nothing to add tonight, thank you.
Nor do I.
Wow. Commissioner Packard.
We wanted to remind the community about the Lower Grand Rapids LGRO, sorry, I'm forgetting what that acronym is, the Adopt a Drain program. It's a perfect time right now to go out and clear your drains and everything healthy. I have adopted the drain at the end of my street and we'll be out there later tonight making sure that it's nice and clean so that we can prevent as much as we possibly can flooding in your city.
That's great. That's great. Thanks. Commissioner Duncan. Okay. I just want to mention tonight is our first night with the new video equipment, and the video equipment was purchased with funds from the East Grand Rapids Community Foundation.
And it's not working right now.
It's not? Okay.
We're on plan
Oh,
B.
we're using the phone. Okay, I didn't see the light. Okay. Well, hopefully soon it will be up and running. And to that point, we will be broadcasting, it will be streaming on YouTube from now on once the equipment's up and running. So, but we will be posting messages on Facebook so that everyone is aware.
When will it be up and running, do we know?
It was working last week Tuesday when you lifted, and when I did the exact same steps, it did not work. So I texted him right now and said, I'll need to talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, good.
So any minute.
Great. Sorry about that. Get y'all excited. Shouldn't have even said anything.
Okay, so and then moving on to regular agenda items, we have the appointment of First Ward Commissioner. And so, since there's no public hearing on this, I just immediately go to a motion, right?
You got, yeah, just
Okay.
open up the discussion and then when you're ready, make a motion.
Yeah, maybe we could have some discussion before a motion. I mean, sometimes we might bring a motion to spur the discussion, but I think since we know what we're
Start with the
talking about.
discussion, okay. All right, so if we want to just start with general discussion, I will start down here with Commissioner.
Yeah, I want to say first off, I was really pleased with the caliber of our candidates. I think we had a fantastic final three, and frankly, a fantastic 7 applicants that came in. We in Planning Commission in Personnel Committee, got to meet with all of those candidates and kind of come up with some reasons why we picked the top 3 that we did to pass along to the City Commission. And as we had our top 3 candidates in here last week, I really was kind of focusing in on some things that were in line with those Personnel Committee conversations, but also then above and beyond what those Personnel Committee conversations were, just to try to differentiate between our excellent candidates. For me, those areas that I really focused in on were the enthusiasm for the position and for the commission, whether there was evidence of leadership and community engagement, whether there was evidence and awareness of an understanding of the master plan, and for me, also a skill set that really is complementary to the commission, in particular as we look to some of our goals that we all campaigned on and also have in the next couple of years here coming up. I was really happy that all 3 of our candidates checked 3 of those boxes very easily. We had fantastic leadership evidence, we had fantastic enthusiasm for the position and the work of the commission, and really a great awareness of the master plan. For me, what differentiated the candidates was that 4th point, that's evidence of the skill set, especially as we think to some of our priorities. For that reason, I personally am having Brad Hexel rise to the top of my conversation. I'm supporting him for my thoughts.
Thank you. Commissioner Duncan, did you want to continue?
Sure. So I wasn't here the first night that the candidates came in. I was absent, so I missed that. But since that time, have dug into what each candidate has to offer, and I agree with Chris. All 3 candidates have an impressive background and an array of skills, each one of whom brings something a little bit different, and very strong to our commission. It's great to have a community that you have 3 or more people stepping up and saying, I want this job and I would like to do this and I want to jump in. For me, I really liked the enthusiasm of all 3 candidates, but before I go down a rabbit hole, I'll just be honest and say the person who rose to the top for me was Brett Hexel, because of his skill set, in particular as a person with real estate experience here in the city. I feel like he is in tune with the housing needs and what is available in our town. That is not to take away at all or diminish the skills that the other 2 candidates bring, which are also very strong. But in the end, you have to pick one candidate, unfortunately. So that's who is going to get my support this evening. I really liked what Brad said about master plan and also questions about housing in East Grand Rapids, because that is something I think several of us want to make sure that conversation is a strong one, so that we address these things. And that was something that Brad did mention, and that caught my eye right away. So I'll be supporting Brad this evening.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move down here then to Commissioner Amherst.
I would like to also say that I was blown away by the caliber of our candidates. They've all dedicated themselves to public service in one way or another, and I think any one of them would make a fantastic commissioner. I think I will also be supporting Brad Hexel, and I think the 2 things that he mentioned during our Q&A session at the last meeting really stood out to me. One is the housing issue, which people have mentioned. Another is one of my main priorities, and something that we're also going to be talking about today is the mobility plan for the city, and the focus on accessible areas, accessible transportation, bike lanes. I think there are a lot of things I like about his priorities, so that's why I will also plan to support Brett.
Thank you.
Thank you. I came here tonight prepared to support any one of the 3 candidates, whoever kind of seemed to have the majority or at least plurality of the support from the commission. I think we have 3 outstanding candidates, and so I was fully prepared and am fully prepared to vote for whoever. And it looks like perhaps Mr. Hexel may be the person that's kind of the rest of the commission is coalescing around. And I appreciate it very much. I'll echo the same comments with regards to very questions seem to have some interesting ideas around some of our housing challenges and some of our opportunities and what we might do in Gaslight. When I was thinking about how to differentiate between three really great candidates, I was also thinking about kind of pointing to what Commissioner Pekla mentioned in terms of kind of what complements our current makeup of the commission and what maybe fills some gaps or differences. And I looked at it a little bit of from a different perspective. I look at our group and I see a group of people who are predominantly Gen Xers, predominantly people who have not lived in the community for a real long time. I think just about all of us are not people who were kind of born and raised in East Grand Rapids. And I think that people understood that in terms of the elections and in terms of choices and kind of a moving forward, future-oriented vision. But I also like the idea of possibly having someone on the commission who has a little bit deeper history on the commission, not on the commission, but in the city, in terms of community connections and relationships and history in the city, and also somebody who maybe has a little bit of a different perspective merely by kind of where they are in their life and the circles that they run in the community. And so if I had to choose one candidate, I would actually choose Mr. Fisher as my preferred candidate, but I'm also fully prepared to vote for any of the candidates. And so if it turns out that Mr. Hexel is the way that the rest of the commission is going, he'll certainly have my support as well.
Okay, so I was on the personnel committee and we had a stellar group of people come in here, and it was so hard to narrow them down to 3, and we wanted to narrow them down to no more than 3. And everybody had something unique and different to offer, and I really appreciated everything and everyone that came in. And it was hard to do that, so we narrowed it down to 3 people. And again, and then it was even more difficult to choose. But at any rate, after a lot of thoughtful consideration, there definitely was the thing that struck me most. Mr. Hexel said that he was really he seemed to understand that we had to deal with zoning and housing issues, and he was very he wanted it to kind of look at how we deal with our future land use, and that's a big deal here. We're so very built out, and I know the schools have said, that people in the school district have said, we really do need to address our our housing. So between that and the fact that he was an estimator for his former employer was Architectural Specialties, and he seemed to have a deep understanding of development and kind of a background in that. And I thought, we're going to be hopefully soon dealing with the rest of the build out Gaslight Village. So that is something that we really will need to have an understanding on the commission about that process, because we're going to be having a lot of conversations about how that development happens and how it's built out. And I know it goes through planning, but I think at the city commission level, we're gonna have to really have some very thoughtful questions that we ask of the property owner. So I think that that's definitely a benefit. And I also really appreciated what you said about connecting with residents, and you made a statement about as soon as you were appointed, you would probably go out and start canvassing and connecting with residents. And I think that's really important when you're a commissioner, is to connect with your constituents, because that's how you build that trust and those relationships, and you get to know what's important to them, and bring all that context back in when you vote on all the issues. So I think that's super important. So for those reasons, I would have to support voting for Mr. Hexel.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for everybody for your comments. And first off, I would like to again thank everyone in the whole process that applied. We had a tremendous turnout. I think we had 7 applicants, and it's a testament to our community that so very many people are so dedicated and considered this position. So first off, thank you to everybody who applied, and then also I'd like to thank the final 3 that were chosen by the Personnel Committee for their interviews and also for your patience over the last 2 weeks. I know it wasn't easy waiting, but it was nice to let the commission and myself come to a decision and really think it over. You were all wonderful candidates, and each obviously very dedicated to the community, and East Grand Rapids is very lucky to have you. So thank you for your willingness to serve. That being said, when I was first considering how this appointment process would go, first and foremost, I wanted to encourage many to apply, and I wanted the process to be as transparent as possible. And I'm really proud of what we've done, because I think the way the appointment was handled was as transparent as it could be. All 7 applicants funneled through the Personnel Committee, and then they chose the final 3. And in an effort to make the new appointee as comfortable, I'm hoping for a consensus. I'm hoping for kind of what I'm hearing happen tonight. And I'm hearing that most of you are in favor of Mr. Hexel, although I know that you pointed out, and I feel we all could support all 3. But I am agreeing with your points. I believe almost everybody brought up the point where Mr. Hexel does kind of fill a gap and is a little bit of, brings a unique skill set to the commission, something that we don't have currently. So that being said, I will go with the consensus and support Mr. Hexel as well. So do we need to have any further discussions?
Can I just add one more thing? I feel bad because it might be because Ms. James isn't here. I do want to briefly, I know people generally have talked about all 3 of the candidates, but I think perhaps in part because Mr. Fisher and Mr. Hexel are here, they've gotten more of the comments. I was also, just want to say, I was really impressed with Ms. James' application and her approach. She was extremely well prepared. It was clear that she researched things very thoroughly. She obviously is a long-term resident, has tons of community connections, knows many people, probably knows many of us from past connections and experiences. She also would have been a fantastic candidate. So I just want to make sure that I specifically speak to Ms. James as well as one of the finalists.
She definitely did her homework.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We had, I think, all 3 candidates were tremendous. Mr. Fisher, Mr. Hexel, and Mrs. James. Absolutely. It was very difficult. So thank you for taking your time, and thank you for having your thoughts so well prepared this evening. So, and thank you to both of you, to the people that are here, and Ms. James. So that being said, I believe we can come and ask for a motion.
Motion to approve Mr. Bradley Hexel for First Ward City Commissioner.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So ready to vote. So all those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, congratulations, Mr. Hexel.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is the final reading of an ordinance to amend section 9.56 of chapter 93 of Title 9 of the City Code pertaining to the age limit for tobacco products.
Yes, just to remind you, all this is really doing is taking 3 existing sections of the code and changing the age that was in those sections from 18 to 21 to bring our code provisions in accordance with federal law, which recently changed, and on a nationwide basis made 21 the age for using tobacco. So we introduced this last time. Tonight would be appropriate to just proceed to adopt the ordinance. No public hearing is required.
Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Huff? So can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve the ordinance to amend section 9.56 of chapter 93 of Title 9 of the City Code pertaining to the age limit for tobacco products.
And a second? So all those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is authorization to proceed with Spring Road and infrastructure projects, to be introduced by Mr. Lefebvre.
Ms. Brower, will you pull up the project, please? Okay, so each year, the city reevaluates all of our pavement condition ratings throughout the entire city. So that's approximately just shy of 50 miles. And the Paisley rating scale is a 1 to 10 scale. That tells us what's going on at the surface. We also look at what we have in terms of our public utilities beneath the surface that are not so visible to our residents, and combine our maintenance and utility projects with street projects, so that we're not paving a road that maybe is a lower Paisley rating, which on the scale is a road that would need a more severe treatment, only then to be excavating for some water main work or sanitary sewer work, for example, a few years later. What we have done is done the analysis of what our surface treatment or surface ratings are, and in conjunction with that, there's also a menu of different types of treatments. So the map that you see here that are provided materials, we also include the Paisley map for you all to see what our ratings are for all of our streets. There's right there. So obviously red is not good, and we've been making some good headway with our local streets, in particular with the millage that was passed in 2015. And if we can go back to the projects here, if you've noticed the projects that we completed this past fall with respect to water main rehabilitation, several of those streets noted there, we were able to complete that rehabilitation this fall, so that when we come back and do the street work here this spring, we shouldn't be back on those particular streets for a long time to come. So it just really fits. That's just a quick summary of our asset management strategy and plans that we have in place for everybody. Then the different colors noted here in the map, as I noted, different rated streets get different treatments. So you don't always want to just focus your investment strategy on your reconstruction or your mill and fill, which is the purple line. So that is where we actually grind out or move the street. We'll do some base repair replacement. We'll do some spot curb repair and ADA improvements at ramps. But we also have to look at those mid-range ratings there too, and make sure that we're investing in treatments there to preserve the life of those streets that have a mid-range or higher level Paisley rating. So when you look at the red, that is a microsurfacing treatment. You see those sections sort of there. So those would be streets, if you travel down them, they don't look too bad. But if we spend some of our resources on preserving that pavement through pavement preservation, we can reset and extend the life of those roads. So that's another area where we're focusing. And then also another preventive maintenance surface treatment that we deploy here in East Grand Rapids is a Cape Seal. And so that's a two-part treatment where we do a chip seal, something you see in more rural roads, but then we sweep it and then put up that microsurfacing. So the same thing that you see in the red goes over top of that, and those are the blue areas. Each year, when you look at our projects that we have projected that come from our staff and consultants, the calibration fluctuates because, again, we're trying to look at the overall ratings of our street network system, what we have in place for utilities, and make the appropriate investments with the dollars we have available. So these are the proposed street projects for this spring. Again, if you remember, a couple years ago, we did switch to a spring cycle for construction to try to keep us away from some of the larger construction that happens in the metro area. It's a bit of a challenge for us to compete with the bidding environment with Grand Rapids, Wyoming, Kentwood, et cetera, and MDOT. So we try to get out of the gate early so we can maximize that lower bid environment, and also to try to have most of our work done so that our residents can enjoy those street improvements for the remainder of the summer. A little note in the memo on the second page, we have a couple bid alternates. We also, throughout the year, I shouldn't just say the year, but when we received any complaints on any street segments with respect to speeding, or if there are any unusual design geometry features on any segment of road that we're looking to do a construction project, we do track those, we do study those. This past year, you'll recall, we had a bid alternate to put in a traffic circle at the five-leg intersection of Alexander, Rosewood, and Cambridge, adjacent to Plymouth. This year, we have, in the bid documents, we have a couple neighborhood traffic circles, so these are smaller than what was constructed on Alexander. Those bid alternates are for two traffic, neighborhood traffic circles that potentially could be located on Argentina. One would be at Pinecrest and one would be at San Lucia. And some of that's related to traffic studies for traffic calming, and some of that's due to at one of the intersections at San Lucia where we have an always stop where the traffic volumes don't really necessitate the actual always stop being there. So it's kind of twofold to correct that situation as well as traffic calming. The other area that we have a bid alternate for neighborhood traffic circle would be in Elmwood at Woodlawn. And that particular area, I'm going on my 6th year here, and that's a particular area where we have quite a history of concerns, namely related to failure to use the traffic control devices there, which is an always stop. And again, when we look at the traffic studies we've studied there, the volumes don't necessitate equal volumes, which is the typical criteria you'd have for an always. So we have, for whatever reason, an always stop that was put into place at some point in time that shouldn't be there. So in terms of traffic calming, but also removing a traffic control device that shouldn't be there, that is another location where we have a bid alternate in for a traffic.
That's Elmwood at Woodlawn?
That's correct. So we'll see what those bid results come back, and if they are within the project estimates, then I think we can proceed to move forward with those. If they're not, certainly we'll come back to the city commission on those. One other street to note, the segment of Pioneer Club here from Reeds Lake Boulevard on the north shore there. That particular stretch of road, we do have some water main rehabilitation that we would like to achieve before we pave that. So with respect to that one street alone, we will be actually, we're going to include it in the bid package and give some leeway for the contractors to come back in the fall to do that section so we can rehabilitate the utility infrastructure in advance of that. So that's one of those areas where we're trying to match as best we can our road funding and our utility funding, and then trying to coordinate that. So with that, those are the street projects there. What we will do is, if approved, we'll go ahead and get that out in our communications to residents. We're always eager to know where we finally have dialed in for this next construction season, and get that up on our website as well. If there are any questions, I'll take them.
Doug, do you have any understanding that the PASER ratings are done in the fall each year?
Correct.
And we don't know for sure what's going to happen with our current streets that are untouched, whether any of them are going to deteriorate. Do we have a rough estimate or a goal as to where we hope to be at the end of this construction cycle with our next PASER rating? That percentage.
Yeah, that percentage. I think I can't like guess at an exact percentage because we always lose. Every street's a little bit different in how it's constructed, and so that's where we have a projected capital plan that we look at, but here we have to kind of fine tune that because certain streets will degrade from a higher rating to a lower rating. We do have other treatments that we do deploy that we actually do in-house with contractors, or actually contract with the Kent County Road Commission in that collaboration. So we will be crack sealing and other things on streets, but these are more the capital type improvements people will see. I can't really speculate to know the exact percentage,
Yep.
but I would think that given the strides we've made, and we've been benchmarking each year, that would probably, I believe we were at 64% off the top of my head in that fair to excellent category. I think we would be somewhere in the high 60s, I think. Once we measure everything, go over everything.
And that's just that general
Sure.
ballpark sense I was looking for.
Sure.
Other question is, I can't remember, I should remember better from my past history. It seems like typically we were able to come in a little bit lower than the budgeted amount, and so we might be able to add one or two more streets or sections or what have you. Do we then kind of have a separate memo later that kind of covers that if in fact that happens?
Yeah, I think if that happens, we certainly will come back to you with some of the streets we had kind of on that order list that we recommend for funding. I think it'll be interesting because as we have more communities in the greater West Michigan area, I'll say, because it's not just the metro area, but as local communities have turned to funding improvements on the local road system, we're seeing higher prices too. So every dollar's not going as far. The more money there's in the system because there's not that many contractors or plants out there. I think the estimate we have is probably pretty spot on. But as you noted, yes, we have been able to add a few streets. So I would anticipate either we're right on or we would probably add 1 or 2 segments.
Right.
Mr. LePage, just to, can you remind me and maybe those in attendance, the work that was done on Lake near Plymouth and Wellfleet, was that cake sealing last year, or is that the microsurface? I'm trying to remember. I know that
Yep.
it was a very different thing that I hadn't seen before.
Yes, so that's a preventive maintenance treatment. So when you're looking at, I believe the Pazer rating on those segments of road were probably a 5, or with some of our pavement treatments, we did in advance of that. So milling out, repaving some segments, doing some crack sealing, just preparation work. We deployed that treatment on those segments of road because we can prolong the life of those surfaces without declining. So yeah, so it looks a little different, and I know there was, and some of those major streets, it's like, wow, there's a lot happening here.
Right.
Certainly it was a whirlwind, yeah, that's that pavement treatment where we basically seal up the road, make any repairs we need to the road surface,
Okay.
put down a chip seal, then we sweep that up, and then they put that microsurface, which looks like an asphalt. It's the asphalt type treatments for that surface. So that should give us another 5 to 7 years on that surface life in that good condition. So we're not out there filling potholes and those types of things.
Yeah.
So we're really stretching the dollars to make those investments.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Just had a quick question. You said that there were 3 traffic circles total, right?
Correct.
So the second one was in Argentina, and there were 2 in Argentina.
Yeah, we're looking at Argentina and St. Lucia, I believe, and then the other one would be at Argentina and Pinecrest.
Got it, okay. Great. Thank you. Anybody else, any other questions? Okay, can I get a motion then, please?
Move to authorize to proceed with the Spring Road infrastructure projects.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so item number 8 on the agenda is contract for mobility bicycle action plan. And again, your introduction, Mr.
Okay, so one of the short-term goals noted in our 1 to 3 year range of the 2018 master plan was for the city to look at preparing a citywide mobility plan focused on ways to improve safety and traveling for cyclists in particular, although that's not necessarily all around cycling. So this past fall, we put together an RFP, which I included in the materials for everybody in the public, and we ran that through the infrastructure committee, and then advertised that out, and we had just 2 firms that submitted proposals. Neither firm submitted any questions from the RFP, and then at a subsequent infrastructure committee meeting, we had some presentations regarding the proposals and the personnel with respect to both firms. And my take was that both firms had excellent qualified people, a lot of names that have been involved with a lot of the work in West Michigan around mobility and safety. And I think it really came down to for the recommendation that's noted here, although I'll let the other city commissioners speak on their own behalf, it really came down to the price and how they put together their team, whether it was more in-house work or if they were partnering with other firms for the PR aspect of things. So I noted what both project proposals are there. That is something that we can absorb within our amended budget, and so I'll leave it at that. Any other questions?
Do you have any questions or comments about that?
I just want to hear from the members of the infrastructure committee, I guess, as to what their perceptions were on the presentations in particular.
Sure. So, do you wanna?
I think both presentations were very thorough, and they definitely covered all the bases. I mean, there was nothing that was left out. The other group that was not Progressive AE, they had, was it Hubble, Roth, and Clark? They had a lot of staff, right? They had a lot of, personnel people that work. Yeah, were they on staff with them, or were they like independent?
I got the impression that they were consultants or independent contractors that were hired to complete the process.
Mhm.
And great resources, certainly, but in some cases, I think it possibly drove up the cost for the other options.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
if there was a huge difference in cost, which was very evident and very swaying for us. But both gave very good presentations. I think both had their strengths. Neither one stood out as head and shoulders better than the other. They were both strong. And we liked different things about each one. But in the end, I think we're getting a very good firm to do the work at what's a good cost for our city. I didn't mean to cut you off, Carrie. Sorry,
Well, no, you covered it.
I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. And really, at the end of the day, I mean, we do have to look at the cost issue.
For sure.
And, you know, it was quite a bit more to go with the other firm, so.
But what am I hearing kind of that perhaps the cost differential is because of their structure? They, you know, they're not so much as in-house, that they have to farm stuff out, which is
Well,
driving costs up, is
most
that-
likely, I mean, they had a lot of individuals come in for the presentation, and probably most of them were consulted, third-party independent contractors. Whereas the progressive AE people, I mean, we just had we had one woman come in and give us her presentation.
Mhm.
And is she on staff, Doug?
She is, yeah.
Okay.
I think there's only one consultant that they have as part of their
Their
proposal.
group.
Right, and
Okay.
I think the other commissioners, their point is that we believe that's probably the cost structure differences is more regarding independent contractors or other consulting firms that they work with.
There were a lot more layers there with the other company.
Before I got to the bottom line, I wanted to note that the other firm, not Progressive A&E, they had done a lot of work in Grand Rapids, significant things that we would all recognize as projects in our city, the city of Grand Rapids. And that was of interest to me too, but in the end, I felt like we were still getting great service by the firm that we chose, Progressive A&E.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, thoughts?
I'd just like to comment that I agree. I think Commissioner Hamrick and Commissioner Duncan laid it out very well. I need to recuse myself from the vote as I work relatively regularly with one of the firms involved, so I won't be voting on this, but I think they're both very talented, and I agree with the way it's been laid out.
Just a point of clarification, was I reading the timeline for Progressive A&E correctly, that they would deliver their final results to us by this July?
I think based on the timing of.
Maybe plus or minus.
I think that the next steps will be with whichever firm you all decide to go with this evening. The next steps will be for staff to reach out to them to open that timeline so that we can get that into our communications platforms, and so that we can get that out to the community to set those meeting dates and times, that type of thing. So I think the deliverable will probably be sometime this summer. So yeah, probably more plus a month or maybe two.
Even though their timeline is a little deceiving on their graphic.
Well, I think
It looks like it's
I-
next July of 2021.
Yeah, I don't think that will be a problem.
Okay.
At all. I mean, the timeline is more dictated by, what we would like to see, and I think in terms of working through, this winter yet into the spring, into the summer, I think we can get, we called out for 3 community engagement meetings, but there's also a demonstration project with one of the firms, and then also community engagement with surveys, and then for them to come back and do the presentation to the city commission as well. So that would be the 4th meeting technically.
And we'll probably go through all the usual channels to let the public know that we want them to participate in the process.
Yep, we will do that.
On the website, on the Facebook page.
We will do that. I'm sure that Kiara and Karen, we can actually, I know sometimes it's helpful to spell out exactly just all the places we were and all the touch points, because sometimes when you go through these lengthy processes, somebody just grabs it at a certain point and may have missed some of those things. So I think we'll be able to spell out to exactly all the modes and communications
I'll just add before we close the discussion, I'm also gonna be recusing myself pretty much for the same reasons as Commissioner Aaron Schwartz. They're, one of the two firms involved with this is a client of Barnum and is somebody that we work with fairly regularly. And so, not sure I'm absolutely required to under our policy, but in abundance of caution, I am gonna recuse myself as well.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well then, thank you, infrastructure, for doing that. Thank you. And, all right, so if I could get a motion, please?
Motion to adopt the contract for mobility bicycle action plan.
And second?
Second.
Support.
Okay. And so all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
All those opposed? Motion carries. So next on the agenda is discussion of spring break meeting.
Sure. So traditionally, with spring break, attendance can be an issue for people. So what we're recommending has been kind of the past practice is to look at rescheduling the regularly scheduled city commission meeting for April 6, 2020 to Monday, March 30th, 2020 at 6 p.m. And that's generally for that type of meeting, just allows us to do more of the consent agenda items, so we can pay bills, those types of things. So that's been the kind of the established past practice, unless there's another meeting date that's desired by the commission.
It's good, I think it's good that we
We're
have
good.
the 3 Mondays in March, so. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve, moving the city commission meeting currently scheduled for April 6, 2020 to March 30th, 2020, 6 o'clock p.m.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? The motion carries. All right, lastly, we have item agenda 9.5, the MERS resolution. Requesting to adopt a resolution directing MERS to reallocate assets within the pension divisions, and this will be introduced by Karen Bouchon.
Good evening. As we've been discussing, we've been looking at ways to make our pension payments more affordable. And there's 2 different things we've been looking at. One is extending our amortization, and this is another piece that had come out of it. It's reallocating some of our assets. We have various divisions within our MERS, and the one that's overfunded, we're not making any payments on that, but we're also not getting any credits for that. So this will reallocate some of those assets to 2 of our underfunded divisions. And the reason we want to do this tonight and get this done is because they're closing down, they're like merging over everything on February 7th from our plan for when they recalculate our payments. And so this piece we really wanted to get in by February 7th. There was another piece to this, which is the agreement to extend our amortization, but that one we can do at a later date. So we just want to get this piece through. We're just moving it so that way we can cut down on our payments for those pieces. Any questions?
I would just add, maybe Commissioner Packlin was about ready to, and we spent a fair amount of time discussing this on Friday in the Finance Committee, so very comfortable with this approach, very appreciative of the work that's being done with regards to our pension obligation and working with MERS on a short-term solution and always considering all of our options as we go down the road.
Yeah, that was more or less what I was going to say. I was going to express appreciation for catching this as a quick timeline piece that we needed to act on to make sure that we had all of our T's crossed and I's dotted, so thank you.
Yeah, we understand you really didn't have a whole lot of time to.
No, I got this on Thursday, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for acting so quickly and for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you for considering it with short notice.
Anybody else? Okay, all right, so can I get a motion, please?
Move to approve the MERS resolution to reallocate assets from an overfunded division to underfunded divisions.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
All those opposed? The motion carries. Okay, lastly, but not least, we have the consent agenda. May I please get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And that concludes the meeting. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Well, yes, she is actually, for, playing in her basement. The other day, she was running and jumping on me.
Nice getting to meet you. Process on this year.
Which cartoon or
Congratulations. Looking forward to working with you. It's gonna be great.
So we have